Hi, Professor Bottis. This is Kelly Lindbergh, and I chose the Andy Griffith show, A Stranger in Town. It was the first season. It was the 12th episode, and it aired December the 26th, 1960. The opening scene is when it was actually kind of funny. Barney's sitting in his barber chair, and the barber, Floyd, is cutting his hair, but what you notice is Barney is really edgy and nervous and not quite himself, but you don't know why. And throughout the scene, you find out that the barber has a bad eyesight. And so Andy comes in and kind of saves the day by trimming Barney's sideburns. And that's where everything started, is when the stranger came to town, is when Barney was getting his sideburns cut by Andy. In the background, you see a bus pull up, and I mean, getting off the bus. He's professional looking, he's clean, there's nothing scary or violent looking, if you may. But he comes into the barber shop, and he knows everybody's name. He knows that Floyd has a disability, and he walks out, and everybody realizes they don't know who this man is. So they immediately become suspicious, and they follow him. Meanwhile, he's talking to one of the ladies with twins, and he knows the twins' names, he knows how to identify them, and he walks away, and she's as perplexed as the boys were. So everybody's growing suspicious. They're talking, they're trying to find out who this man is. They bring up that maybe he's an alien, he's a spy. But what's funny is Barney is not only the townspeople, but Barney is actually really scared of him and really wants Andy to do something about this stranger that came into town. Andy plays really cool about the whole situation, as usual. He tells half-hearted jokes and basically gives an overall sense of direction, a calming sense that the stranger is nothing more than just a man that came to town. Through following this gentleman around, they find out his name is Ed Sawyer, and now Ed is telling people of Mayberry that he is from Mayberry. And so everybody in the town is growing suspicious. They're calling Andy, and they want something done. So Andy's at the station, and Ed comes in, and basically what happens is you still don't know why Ed Sawyer is in town, but you do find out that he's in love with Lucy, and Lucy Matthews actually walks into the station while Ed and Andy are in the station, and she's coming in to file a complaint against Ed because Ed keeps ringing and knocking on her doorbell, on the door, and Ed just overreacts and becomes anxious to see her, and it's actually the first time they met. They haven't seen each other, but I guess Ed had already known about her, but they just don't know how he knows her. So when Lucy leaves and rejects his love, that's when Ed breaks down and he tells his story to Andy. He was in the Army with Joel Larson, I'm sorry. Joel and Ed, Joel told Ed about stories about his hometown of Mayberry, and then like read him in the paper and just told how much he loved Mayberry. And so Mayberry became Ed's hometown, adopted hometown. Well, Joel passed away in the war, and Ed kept getting the newspapers from Mayberry, and he even subscribed to them so he could read them. He lived in New York, and he lived in hotels, motels. He was lonely, he was single, and after studying Mayberry, if you can say that, he came into Mayberry knowing the businesses, knowing that the gas station was for sale, knowing about Lucy, probably through Joel, and he was just lonely. And that's basically what he tells Andy. And Andy actually has empathy and is open to Ed in his story. Once Andy finds out Ed's story, he wants to tell the newspaper and have an article written. So Ed leaves. Andy's on the phone. He's talking to the newspaper. He's excited. And then he hears a lot of commotion going on outside the station. And he walks out, and there's a crowd, a mob of people, and they're surrounding Ed. Ed is quiet, but Bill Matthews, who's actually Lucy's brother, is kind of like the town bully, and he's speaking up for the crowd, telling Andy he wants something done with Ed. He wants Ed out of town. Well, Andy, as usual, calms everybody down, and as they listen to Andy, they listen to the story of how Ed came to be in Mayberry, and everybody just opened up to Ed, considered Ed a resident, and even Lucy asked him out for a date. And what's really funny is at the end scene is just like the opening scene where Barney was getting his hair cut, but this time it's actually Andy bringing Ed in to get his hair cut, and Ed sits down in the chair, and then he realizes Floyd does not have good eyesight as well, and he looks anxious, and that's how they end, which was kind of genius at the time, I think. I did find out the non-occurring characters of Stranger in Town. Ed Sawyer, the stranger, was only in this episode once. Lucy Matthews, Ed's love interest, again, she was not a recurring character, as well as Floyd the barber. He was a town barber. And even though Andy Griffith hangs out at the barber shop throughout the series, Floyd is only in this one episode. So there's 3 people in this episode that do not come back. The reason why I chose Andy Griffith is I think I have a crush on him. No, really the reason why I chose Andy Griffith was because the show really got my attention in class. And as a child, I used to watch Andy Griffith, as well as I Love Lucy, All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Good Times, and, especially the Dick Van Dyke Show. I think that was my favorite. But being in the class, I found this new love for Andy Griffith. I don't know, it's watching the shows, all the shows that you had in our class, the Cultural Times has, I found out, really affected television today, and I didn't realize how much it affected. And then I looked back, and I remember as a child, I was not able to watch One Day at a Time, All in the Family. Eventually, I started watching it. I think that, and Benny Hill. I was not allowed to watch that, of course, but I watched it. Anyway, yes, the Cultural Times with Andy Griffith stood out from the crowd of the rest of the episodes that you had chosen for us. Each episode has a simple plot. It's written with such innocence, but yet there's a storyline. It teaches somebody in the cast of characters a lesson, and it teaches us a lesson as well. Another reason why I liked the show and picked it is because I wanted to watch it again. To date, I have not seen any shows that hasn't had, that was a comedy drama that doesn't have sex, violence, cursing, or any type of reference to cursing, nudity. Everything I watch now has that in the show, and Andy Griffith was able to put together a quality show without using these types of stuff in the storyline that, you know, it just was innocent, and there was just no adult content in it, and I wanted to see how, I wanted to watch it again, I guess, because I was curious on how they wrote this storyline to be so innocent without having to reference all the other stuff nowadays they think they have to get the ratings. The approach that this episode showed was a little bit different than all the other shows or the episodes. Especially, it was season 1, and it was the 12th episode, and so it was right in the middle of the show, starting its first year, and like for the first time, they didn't center around Andy, Opie, Aunt Bee, or even Barney. They centered around somebody that was not in the cast of characters, and, you know, a stranger, in fact. So, mainly, I thought it was interesting that it was the first season that they did this. It's usually like the second or third season that they bring somebody in, and then they pull away the characters. It's kind of like what Seinfeld did. At the end, Seinfeld told the media that he pulled away and let his cast become the show. And that's what happened here. The stranger in town is something I could personally relate to. I came from a small town, and it was a small community, a coal mining community. And even though it wasn't Mayberry, we definitely had the same apprehension about even people driving through town that we didn't know. I remember being embarrassed when somebody drove through town, and like some of the guy friends would be yelling at them. It was ridiculous. But definitely apprehension when a new kid started school and you didn't accept them right away. You kind of watched them to see what kind of character they were, and then most of the time, almost all the time, they were accepted. They immediately were accepted by everyone. So this is how the show also portrays itself at the end. Everybody accepts Ed Sawyer as a resident of Mayberry. There has been a few times where I felt like Ed Sawyer myself, you know, like having to make very unpopular decisions at work that no one is happy with. Like on the PTA, it's actually worse than work. They're more judgmental, and having to just basically do what Ed did, is stand there and listen and wait till everybody calm down, and then they're open enough to listen to your story. It's not that everybody has a mediator like Andy Griffith, but it's about everybody accepting each other and their viewpoints. And that's what the storyline was about, and that's how I personally related, having been there many times myself. I chose this particular show as it was my favorite on the list, to be honest with you. That's it. But because I do like, again, I have been intrigued by Andy Griffith shows since studying them in your classroom. The change of pace in this episode is still the same as the regular Andy Griffith shows, but Andy Griffith takes a step back, and I noticed that he's more laid back. He's cracking personal jokes, and especially at Ed Sawyer in the station, he was like actually making fun of him, but he's like just, he's sitting down, he's relaxed. His overall mannerisms are more relaxed than the episodes I've seen so far. Another scene, actually two scenes, were at the barber shop that I could relate to. Is even though Floyd, the barber, had bad eyesight and nobody wanted to get their hair cut there, they just kind of hung out, but they did get their hair cut because they felt loyal to Floyd, and it was their community that they supported. They supported Lloyd, even though they were afraid to get their sideburns cut. Again, I have been there myself. I understand the sense of community and the purpose that each person plays. The filming and the production style stayed the same. When they led into a new scene, there was music. It was still a slow-paced, show. Again, it was relaxed and just slow. A Stranger in Town was well written, I thought, and it had kept a busy storyline, to be honest with you, for a slow-paced show. But it also reminds you, the viewer, that people can seem, strangers can seem strange or odd or out of character, but actually it's when the people accept them is when they break through their personal barriers and let go of the stereotyping that we see ourselves in that person, if that makes sense. At one time or another, it was us that people were having to accept. But truly letting yourself be free and finding personal satisfaction in yourself is how, is how we learn to accept other people. The story plot was innocent but yet wholesome, and told a story. And not that that's unique, but that's why I enjoyed it. So I appreciate your time. I'm sorry. I hope this was okay, and thank you very much for listening. Have a good night.